So you just tell me, hi guys, we're here. I'm just with Naketa. We're just getting everything set up on our broadcast. Are you able to see it, Naketa?
Not yet, but I'm sure it will. Good old Facebook, right?
I know. And if we don't see it right away, I'll make sure it's on there as soon as it's over. Okay. All right, Alexa, stop. All right, welcome to another episode of Strong as a Mother. My name is Stacy Uhrig, and my special guest, my very, very special guest today is Naketa Thigpen. And before I introduce Naketa and how we met, and we get right into her story, just a recap for people who have never seen this web series before. This is something that I developed as soon as people got sheltered into place with COVID. I had already been on a journey of trying to flip mindsets, and I got very, very concerned when I saw the deep isolation that everybody was experiencing and kind of how everyone was going inward and how a lot of depression was setting in for people around me. And what I knew to be true is that though COVID is hard, each one of us has probably gone through something much, much harder than this in life. And what I wanted to do with this series is have it act as a reminder that we are resilient, that we can do hard things. And I know we can do hard things because we have done hard things, and that this is just a season. It's a tough one for many people, but it's just a season in a very, very, very long lifetime of experiences that will both be great and challenging all the same. And so what I've done over the course of the last few months is I've brought people out to speak who can exemplify resilience, or they can share with us challenges that they've had that have been more challenging than what they're experiencing with COVID, and use some of the strategies that they got or that they used to get through that. It's been a really powerful series, and I decided to bring in Naketa, ask Naketa to join us for this because, you know, within my other business, I've learned to really grow my network. And I tend to friend a lot of people in the mindset space just because it's something that really interests me. And I believe I reached out to Naketa a few years ago. And I've always followed her. I've always been very inspired by what she does. But I have to say, like, inspired doesn't even touch how I feel after I've read her book. So I thought I knew why I wanted Naketa on this. And the reality is when I asked her to be a guest speaker, she said, girl, have you read my book yet? And I was like, mm-mm. And she's like, okay, well, you're going to have to do that first. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And I knew nothing going into reading this book. And what I will tell you is that the first paragraph will capture your attention. And it certainly caught mine. I can't do it justice. I'm going to allow her to share with you her story. But what I want to tell you is that I have been preaching this for years, that life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for you, that nothing in this world is happening to you. It's a one-word difference, that it's happening to you versus for you. And I think in most cases, some people would have had the experiences that Naketa has had in her life and said, I can't believe this happened to me. Or people might even listen to her story and say, girl, I can't believe that happened to you. And what I love about Naketa, and I think what we have a similar philosophy, is she knows it didn't happen to her. It happened in her space for sure, and it happened something she experienced personally. But throughout the course of the book, I could see she knew at some point that all of the challenges that she had, and they are significant, happened to her benefit for a very specific reason. And so what I want to go over today is allow Naketa to introduce herself. I want her to share your story. And I want her to share with you what she gained from that experience. So welcome, Naketa.
Thank you so much, Stacey, for having me. And more than anything, for honoring this space for everyone who's showing up to listen, whether live or replay, it doesn't matter as long as they get the information. So you being here to flip mindsets, being a little cheeky with that, is truly crucial. There's no better way to say that. So thank you.
Thank you. So Naketa, will you share with us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah.
Wherever you want, credentials, whatever, because girl, you've got them. And share with us how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, so fortunately we have time because it definitely is a journey. So thanks for having more than 10 minutes for that as well. So just, I guess starting with the noun and then walking people backwards is probably the easiest. So noun, I am CEO of a global personal development company called Thigpen Balance and Relationship Management Institute. We have two main divisions. We service our married women entrepreneurs that we also say, as long as you're with your forever love in a monogamous relationship and you really want to create a happy marriage, whatever that marriage kind of constitution looks like for you, without losing yourself while you're scaling those 6 and 7 figure businesses is really crucial, because I get to do all of my personal development work with that woman. And eventually, if her spouse is brave enough, with them as power couples. And on the other side of our global corporation, we work and do a lot of leadership intimacy with companies who really want to invest in not only their leaders, but their managers that are emerging leaders that they're training forward. So that's kind of like where I am now. How I got there was about 9.5 years ago. I totally invested in me in the most difficult way possible. I jumped into entrepreneurship just looking for another way to breathe, quite honestly. I was already, an established professional, a licensed clinical social worker specializing in trauma, was already doing a lot of private practice things, kind of like on the side, relationship therapy with couples, with families who were dealing with grieving, like bereavement of various traumatic issues, whether they were happening individually or maybe they lost a child, whatever the case was, and it was impacting their relationship or their ability to have healthy, non-toxic relationships. I was doing all the things. I was working my 3, 4, 5 jobs. And if anyone is familiar with human behavior, period, you know that you are not paid well, just like our teachers, right? Like you are not paid well. And if you want any kind of lifestyle, you're going to most likely have 2 at minimum or 3 jobs to be able to create the vision of security that you help other people get by nurturing them through that kind of space where they're surviving their circumstances and hopefully moving them into a space where they can, feel really good about where they are. I felt stuck in that good work that I was doing because I wasn't in love with it anymore. I didn't want to just help people survive the emotional experiences, the trauma, the torturedness that they were having in or out of relationships. I wanted to help them thrive. And the only way that I knew to do that was by giving them some form of financial freedom, which is why I started my company and kind of eventually learned a lot about me because Stacey, more than most people, entrepreneurship will expose all the pieces of you that you didn't know.
Because what people don't understand if they're not entrepreneurs, though honestly, I feel like it's in all areas of life, is that whatever your core beliefs are about yourself and about the stories that you've created in your life, they will 100% affect every other aspect of your life, including your business. So if you want to soar as an entrepreneur, if you do not deal with the underlying stuff that makes you tick, you will never be as successful as you possibly could be.
That's right. 1,000%. It comes down to personal development, right? Like you being able to be aware, to slow down enough to be aware of whatever is going on. And sometimes to embrace whatever that breakdown moment is, or might not be a moment, right? It might be a season in your life where you feel like everything is unraveling and you're breaking down. How I got to that space of really wanting to be someone who could, without sounding arrogant, like a fixer, right? Like a problem solver for other people who were dealing with that. It's quite honestly, I was trying to fix my own issues. My super background, like going all the way back to where it all started for me, not including before I was born, because there was a lot of things that impacted my life that had nothing to do with me because I wasn't here yet, but it definitely showed up in my life, is my mother, who was 17 years old when her and my father co-joined and had me. She created me as an escape from an abusive situation that she was in, living with my grandmother and my step-grandfather. She was being severely abused. And one of the ways she knew to get out of it was to get pregnant. So they would kick her out, right? Like that would be like the perfect way to get out of the house. So I was not born out of love. I was already born as someone who was going to fix someone else's life, right? Like this, I was an escape. I wasn't an escape that was looked forward to with joy. It was like, this is my out. And once I get my out, I'm over it. And because she had her own significant issues, being a very brilliant woman who was completely unbalanced herself, mentally, emotionally, because of all the trauma she suffered, being with my father, who was also an abusive man, all the things that were going on in her mind, and still seeing like having a baby and getting kicked out of the house would be the best thing that could ever happen for her. Not having a plan of where to go, not knowing what that would look like, and not really having an attachment to me as her firstborn child. That created a dynamic that I would definitely not understand, my first few years of life, trying to figure out like why she doesn't connect to me, why everything I say to my mom, she's like snapping at me like I just caused a fire, and I'm just asking basic questions. Over time, she became drug addicted, and she closed her eye to a lot of the things that were happening, which included us being in a situation where we ended right back into that household that she was escaping from because of financial situations and, the divorce from my father by the time I was 3 and all of that. And she knew going back to this home would be torture for her. Whether she realized it in advance or not, she allowed the torture to be passed down to me, because then I became a victim of the sexual abuse and all of the emotional abuse and all of the verbal abuse and all of that. And my mother chose to leave. She had an option once it was discovered that she was doing drugs as a form of medication, right? To medicate from all this stuff. She had an option to stop doing drugs and go into rehab, or to leave. And she could not take me with her. And she said, keep her. Right? Like, just keep her here, knowing all of the things that were going on. So I very much felt like a throwaway kid. The people that I was left with were definitely not keeping me safe, in all the ways that we know as parents who love our kids, who would ride out for our kids, that how you keep your kids safe. And leaving me in that situation forced me to grow up really fast in one area and to stay a broken child in others. When it came to relationships, I was a broken child for 25, 30 years after that. I really did not understand how to have healthy relationships with good boundaries, that it wasn't okay that just because someone needed you didn't translate to them loving you, right? And I'm not just talking about your intimate physical relationships. I'm talking about your friendships, right? The girlfriends that come along and you're the best thing since sliced bread, but only when they need you for something, not because they really want to contribute or add value to your life. And I made a lot of mistakes in that. My escape and my hiding space, if you will, was in plain sight. It was education. I was like, all right, well, there's a lot of things I can do wrong, or I can get some things right and invest in me. And I didn't necessarily translate that into money or power or any of that. I definitely wanted to win. I wanted to be independent. I wanted to be 75% different than what I saw growing up. Where that number came from, I don't know, but I do remember around 9 years old when my mother chose to leave me there. I was like, I am going to be 75% different than these people. I cannot be like them. I think innately there was some part of me that knew, not knowing the science, that, drug is, a horrible illness, like not knowing all of that at the time. Obviously, I'm 9 years old. I didn't know that there was still something good in my family. There was something good that I could pull from them. I would find out later that the good was the lessons that I chose to take from that, right? Like every woman in my household had 2, 3, 4 jobs. They all worked. They knew how to work. They knew how to get money and to save money. They didn't know how to invest it. They didn't know how to, divvy it up. But I knew I was going to take away hard work. I knew how to be fierce and quiet at the same time, right? Like, those were definitely positive lessons that I took from my family. And maybe that was the 25% that I couldn't verbalize at the time. But those things will propel me into, learning about trauma, learning about psychology, learning about sociology, anthropology, being a clinician, wanting to help other people. It definitely put me on a trajectory of a helper that once I received my own help and got my own self together and did my own work, that I could be unbound. But there was a lot of trial and tribulation into getting into that space. And quite honestly, I was a certified psychotherapist and all the things well before I really came into that space of being whole again.
I have written down so many things. Oh God. I mean, and I messaged you last night. I was like, I have like 6 different avenues that I could take this. And honestly, it could end up being multiple, episodes. But one of the things, and I've not just read your book, I've listened to some podcasts. One of the things that I find so fascinating, and I find it to be a common thread that you and I carry, and I'm always curious to where it comes from, is the sense of resilience at a young age when it hasn't been modeled. So without getting into details, I too would categorize my childhood as traumatic from my perspective. Some people may have looked at it and not seen it as such, but I found it to be for a variety of reasons. And there too was something in me that caused me to have a sense of self-worth and a sense of importance, even though I wasn't being made felt worthy or important.
Right.
And when I listened to your podcast last night with Michelle, and you were talking about how at 8 or 9 years old, you had this sense in yourself that you were going to be 75% different and you were going to do it, I had this aha moment of, okay, what is that?
Yeah.
Why is it that certain people, you could have 4 people go through the same exact experience. I know that you're the oldest of 5. So I don't know what the childhoods were like other than the one brother that you talked about in the book a lot that you took care of so much. But I don't know a lot about your siblings, but I can assume that many of them went through a similar experience. How many of them came out the same as you in the sense that they took their experience and pushed it into a place of purpose? Why do you think certain people are capable of doing that?
Yeah, that's a really valid question because the science is torn on it, right? Like there are some people, some parts of the scientific community that literally say resilience is inward, it's innate. If you were not born with it, whatever that is, and they're trying to like narrow it all the way down to a DNA strand, like a genetic code, then you just won't have it. And then there's other parts of science that says, it's everybody has resiliency within them, but there are certain external factors that exacerbate whether or not you're able to walk that out, basically. Kind of like, there's science that says all of us is walking around with some form of a cancer or autoimmune, but some will have environmental factors exacerbate it and actually have cancerous symptoms and, full-fledged cancer, and others, it will lie dormant forever and ever and ever, right? So the science is really torn on it. From my personal belief and from my professional experience working with tens of thousands of families at this point, because I've definitely stopped counting, even before, I became a balance and relationship advisor as an entrepreneur, in the work that I've been doing the last 9.5+ years with the Global Personal Development Company. I believe that it is definitely innate and it is brought out based on the guidance that you receive. So for me, and I can't speak for you, but for me, I had people who were outside of my home who I call my angels. And they helped me at different stages in different ways. Some was just as small as a neighbor 4 doors down the street that just said, hey, that girl looks sad. Do you want to come over here and get a hot dog? Right? Like just having a little bit of respite from a friendly, safe space, friendly, friendly, safe person who wanted nothing from me other than just to help me. Like those small moments. And it wasn't like she gave me midnight respite every time something was going on. It wasn't like she kicked in the door when she heard something, but those small moments, for me, she will forever be one of the angels in my life that I feel like God actually gave me to replace those things that the safety people that were supposed to be my safety people, my parents, were supposed to do. And then there were some that were more extreme, like my mother-in-law, who's been my mom since I was 13. Like I say mother-in-law to you to just be clear that she was not my birth mother, but she is my mom. And she was my mom for years before I even started dating her son, right? Like that was who's now my husband, like that whole trajectory that came. She was the constructive, critical person that I needed, that would call me out and say, I don't care what's going on in your house. You don't get to be negative about how you speak about adults in your life, because how you speak about them might be how you speak about me, and call them names, or, kind of not be a 13-year-old, right? Like just feel like I was entitled to certain language or certain ways of being when it was inappropriate. It was, regardless of what was happening in my life, it was inappropriate. And it definitely would have set me up in a very different direction had she given me permission to be like, oh, girl, I understand you're dealing with all of that at home. Who wouldn't talk like that? She was like, not in my house, not in front of me. Like she gave me that firm structure that I needed with love. She wasn't always smiling and hugs and kisses, but she also showed up for me at school when the high school counselor, as we know, a lot of counselors, especially in public schools, don't necessarily do their job. They're overwhelmed, overextended, all the things. When they weren't helping me with my college applications, and I definitely didn't have anyone inside my house to help me with that, she was like, oh, your butt is going to school. So she went up there and advocated for me, not being blood related to me, not having any legal authority to, like, a definite angel, who went above and beyond, right? Like, so I do believe that guidance and that support in those little ways along the way. Two of my aunts are definitely my angels, who grew up in the same house, but they're older than me. So they were out before a lot of the extended stuff that I went through, like really, before I started to become a young woman and all the abuse really took off. They were already gone and grown and had kids and, all the things, and in the military or whatever. But having them in my life and still knowing that I could reach out, even though I didn't feel safe enough to share what was happening, even though I was really struggling with the shame and the guilt of it all, I really, personally thought it was my fault as a, young kid. Well, he was only bothering the light-skinned kids. I was the grandchild that wasn't biologically his. Why wasn't he, not that I want something to happen to anybody else, but like, why am I the only one? All the things. When you're told that you're fresh so many times, you start to believe it. You start to be like, oh, well, maybe I'm just fresh, all that stuff. But I do believe that having some hope in your life, even if it's a small moment of kindness from someone that's damn near a stranger, that makes all the difference in whether or not that innate, resilient gene, bug, whatever we want to call it, whether it just sparks up and starts to, blossom over time. And for me, it was definitely those 11 different people who came along at different stages of my life that helped me to continue to hold on to hope. And I would not, honestly, Stacey, I wouldn't have identified it as hope, right? Like I wouldn't have called it hope at 9 and 12 and 15 years old. It was just like, wow, not everybody is jacked up, right? Like in my
sense of comfort.
Exactly. Of just, small moments, but really, really totally helped me.
I think it's interesting. I want to pull back on something you said, because I'm all about language.
Yeah.
And I think so often we never really think about what we say, but there's so much power behind literally every single word.
Yeah.
And I've gone through this experience myself, so I'm curious to what you would think. You said something. You said, that you were gaining this support from other people, not the ones that you were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I had to peel back along the way, because what happens is, as children, we have been told that there's this hierarchy, there's this structure.
Mm-hmm.
right? These are the two people that gave you life. They're called your parents.
Yep.
They're supposed to be your protectors. They're the ones that are supposed to guide you on the right thing to do. They're the ones that are going to show you the way. They're going to be your people.
Yep.
These are your go-to. They automatically belong in your arena. Right? And these are your grandparents. They fit into the same boat automatically in your arena. Your immediate family automatically in your arena. And I don't know how much Brene Brown you've read or dove into, but I just love her. And the very first time I read Daring Greatly was it was in 2012. So it was almost 8 years ago. And when I read it, I was like, oh my God, this is it. I've always put my family in the arena, but people earn the place in our arena.
That's right.
They earn the place in our arena. And what ends up happening, and I hope that whoever is watching this, there's at least one person that can say, thank you, thank you, thank you, I didn't understand this, is that we're the ones that put them there based on what we were told was supposed to be the way. But what I've learned is just because a parent is your parent biologically, does that mean that they can ever fill that role? You know, there are people who have children that are limited in what they're capable of giving, mainly because they never received it themselves.
Yeah.
It's this tragic cycle of neglect and betrayal and abuse and all the things that hinder someone's ability to unconditionally love. And when you can't unconditionally love, you can't teach someone else how to do it. So we're looking for something that we're never going to get because they don't know how to do it. They're incapable. And so we're spinning our wheels, and what ends up happening, we create behaviors to try to manipulate them to get them to love us. I'm going to be perfect. If I'm the perfect child, maybe they'll love me. I'm going to do great in school. If I do great in school, maybe then they'll see me as important. I'm going to do all these amazing things because then I'll get the respect that I feel like I should get. And I use the word should very carefully. I should get because this is the role that this person is in my life. That was such an aha moment for me 8 years ago. And if you can get yourself to that place, and I know that it took you a long time to do it, to be able to see the people that gave us life as just the person that gave us life. And if they can fill both roles, fantastic.
Right.
But if they can't, they filled at least one. And even if they can't fill the role that we think they should be filling, there are things that we're gaining from them as far as lessons. And I know your mother taught you so many lessons. It's just not the lessons you thought you were supposed to get from a mother. Would you say that that's true?
1,000%, on multiple levels, down to, we give people positions that they have not earned, nor do they deserve. And it doesn't mean that those people are bad people, right? So I want to make sure that I highlight that those people are not necessarily, although I'm not excluding those that it applies to, they're not necessarily evil people.
They're wounded people.
Yeah, they're wounded humans going through their own healing or ignoring and denying process. And many of us do that. If you've been battling and in war your entire existence, it is incredibly hard, not only for you to know when it's okay and it's safe enough to stop being on edge and looking for the bullet or the sword to kind of come swinging towards you, proverbially even, but also you're constantly in this high state of adrenaline. You don't even feel the pain that is constantly being inflicted on you, right? It's really difficult. And I know for me, forgiving my parents was really crucial for my healing. And that was a challenge. My father has been in and out of jail since I was, 14, 15 years old. On the adverse childhood experiences scale, which is kind of a scale that a lot of psychologists give people to kind of see what their childhood, under 18 childhood experiences are, I'm literally 9 out of 10. And the only 5. Right? And the only reason that I'm not 10 is because technically the last question is, was a person that was older than 5 years older than you ever sent to jail while you were under 18, and that lived in your same household. And technically my father didn't live in my household, which is the only reason I can't answer that is yes, but he was my parent who wasn't. Other than that, it's 10 out of 10. So I would have.
If people don't know about ACEs,
yeah.
Okay, ACEs are adverse childhood experiences. And there are studies that show that anybody who has over 4 has a higher likelihood of ABCXYZ, whether it's an increased rate of illness, which is a whole other video that you and I are going to have to do, because I'm starting to unravel a lot of stuff there. Homelessness, drug addiction, imprisonment. And it makes me crazy, because if we could get early into the cycle and people were more aware of the traumas that children are going through in their younger years, they have the ability to decrease homelessness, decrease drug addiction, decrease imprisonment, because so much of that is a result of and a symptom of generational trauma and abuse.
Absolutely. Thank you. I just saw Sandra in the comments said, I was meant to hear this today. Thank you, Stacy and Naketa, for sharing your experiences.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm going to put the comments up because I can see them here.
Yeah.
Oh, and I love Sandra, and she knows I know her story too. So, here's the thing. I have so many things I've written down. We could talk about 1,000 things. We could talk about the fact that your adverse childhood experiences started in the womb with the amount of cortisol that your mother was releasing because she was in constant fight or flight all the time. And then she saw getting pregnant and getting kicked out of her house as her best method of survival. I wish people could see through the lens through which I see people, because so often when I see someone struggling like that, I automatically see the whole journey prior.
Yeah.
There's no judgment. Too many people judge when they see somebody that's addicted to crack. They judge when they see somebody that's homeless. They judge when they see somebody that's repeatedly making the same mistakes and ending up in prison. If we could stop judging people and start seeing them as just the human beings they want to be seen as, that's all that they want. And maybe their shame, you brought up shame before, was so great because of the experiences that they have, that they're just living basically a self-fulfilled prophecy.
Yeah, repeated cycles. Absolutely. The shame, guilt, poor boundary cycles, they just repeat and show up in other areas of our life. Now, if they happen to have children, obviously the children have that rained upon them because they're with them traditionally 24/7, right? Like assuming that they're in the same household and, there's no foster care adoption, that kind of thing happening. If they have extended relationships, the girlfriends, the guy friends, sisterships, siblings that don't live with them, that, we all have those moments that we at least can think of one friend that's like, oh, I haven't talked to my sister in 10 years, right? Like there's a reason for that. It doesn't mean that those sisters aren't good people. They have their own traumatic issues that are blocking them. And part of it is because one or both of them have recognized there's a cycle that one of those siblings is stuck in, and they don't want to be sucked into it like a black hole. They're like, I'm not, even if I'm in my own cycle, I'm not in that cycle anymore. And I don't want to get pulled into her stuff or his stuff or their stuff. Yet, if you're not addressing it, even though you might have given yourself some respectful, healthy boundaries with that particular sibling, if you have not addressed it yourself, you're still showing up at work, spewing that in your own way, in your own cycle. Because maybe now you're the queen bee that, people are talking about and no one wants to deal with anymore at work because you're holding the next chick down, right? Like, and doing it because you haven't dealt with your own stuff. So it's coming out one way or another, whether it's in your work, your life, or your love, including your love of yourself. If you're not willing and ready to do the work, because you can say, I want to be healed. I want to be great. I want to get over this as much as you want. But if you're not actually open to doing the work because you're making justified excuses like, oh, I'm too busy. And, and then saying you're busy is betterment. Like, oh, I'm bettering myself. Are you? Or are you hiding from it? And I say this as the first partaker, someone who did the same exact thing,
And I found it fascinating. And it's so interesting that you said it in this podcast yesterday, because I recently said this to a friend of mine. You were saying that you realized that you also had an addiction.
Yes. But
your addiction was stress.
Yes.
Which is not a surprise, because when you go through adverse childhood experiences over and over and over and over and over again, the chemicals that you release in your body during that fight or flight experience, they become addictive.
Absolutely.
And so what you did is you made it presentable, approachable, appeasable, okay, because it resulted in success, right? But it was still an addiction. Absolutely. And I recently, within the last year or so, was having a conversation with a friend, and it was fascinating because her and her sister grew up in the same house. There was abuse, there was domestic abuse, there was drug abuse, there was a lot of different kinds of abuse happening in the household. Her sister ended up becoming a drug addict. Okay, so she continued the cycle, probably trying to numb very similar pains to what was being numbed before, and she probably was predisposed to having an addiction personality. My girlfriend went in the exact opposite situation on paper. Okay, she started a nonprofit in Africa. She became on the front of Time magazine as a hero during Ebola, like extreme difference. But the situations she put herself in were highly dangerous, highly dangerous. And I realized it when she was telling me about a time that she was in college and she didn't have any money to support herself. And so she had no place to live. So she was hiding out in a crack house. And one that was no longer being used. But that's where she decided to live because it was free. There was no one else there. And I was like, you're like addicted to danger. Right. You're addicted to adrenaline that comes up into your system when you're doing things that are just on the edge, that would pretty much scare the bejesus out of most people. And she was so shocked when I said that. And she was like, you were the first person to have ever identified that. And I think we all end up with very specific personality traits as a way to survive our lives. Yeah. And I also believe very strongly, I apologize in advance because the mailman's coming to the door and I have a dog and I'm working.
We love dogs.
See what happens. And I kind of want to conclude this because I don't want it to go so long because I don't want to lose people's attentions, but we're going to have to come back for at least another episode because we have so much to unravel here. But here's one thing I want to conclude with. So often we get so frustrated with people when they go through a similar experience to us. Maybe they're a sibling, maybe they're a family member, maybe they're a friend, a coworker, whatever. We're going through the same experience. Yeah. Right? But we come out of it very differently. And often ego comes in. I can't believe that person didn't see it the way that I saw it. I can't believe that person isn't upset the way that I'm upset. I can't believe that person isn't ABCXYZ. And I know people struggle with this, and this is why I wanted to bring it up. They're not meant to see it the way that you see it because their journey is not your journey. What you're meant to take from this life is yours. That's why I truly believe that every single, life is a series of experiences that are divinely designed for you. So you could have 4 people, 3 people, 2 people go through the same exact experience and come out of it completely different because of what is divinely designed for you. What are you meant to do in your life? Yeah. What's your God-given purpose? So you know what your God-given purpose is. You know, in many ways, you've realized it. That might not have been the same purpose for some of your siblings. They have a different purpose. You know, and their purpose may not be realized in their lifetime. It might be something that gets passed down generationally to other people in their lives. You know, we have to think bigger about why things happen in our space and see them all as gifts, not as obstacles. And if you can flip your mindset and you can flip the lens through which you see these experiences, it's easier to honor them than to be angry with them. You can't do it when you're in it. I'm not expecting people to like be superheroes and like be in a traumatic situation and automatically be able to flip and say, oh my God, wait, Stacey said it's happening for me, so I shouldn't be upset. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is when you get far enough away from it and you've had enough space in between to do some self-healing, it's a wonderful way to go back and reflect and look at all of the challenges. I wrote down, oh, sorry. I was doing a lot of, you know, self-work. And I just wrote down yesterday on this piece of paper, it says life experiences. And I just started jotting down things that have been challenging in my life. Yeah. You know, some adverse things that happened in my childhood, abandonment, lack of protection, lack of love, feeling secondary, narcissistic parents, infertility, adoption, the demise of a family business, my son having a concussion, like all these different things were like big little milestones in my whole big journey. But they all encompass the same thing, which is resilience, right? They're all there to design to show me it's okay that it's hard. It's okay that it's painful. The painful ones are the ones that make you wiser. They're the ones that make you more aware. They're the ones that make you more sensitive to what other people need. Right? And I feel like you did that by going and getting a degree. I mean, you have a doctorate, which is like incredible to me. In psychology, correct?
So let me be clear. I have a lot of degrees. But I'm all but dissertation in my PhD in public health. And that was me choosing to really invest my time in my business, which was scaling at the time. So I actually like didn't finish that, which is one of those weird moments to say out loud, because it's like, well, you finish everything, Naketa. But that was a choice, and me choosing to hold the expectation of what other people might have had for me, or to do what I really wanted, which was to create my reality and create my joy, which is really important to the point of what you're talking about, looking at some of the challenging moments of your life that help to blossom your resilience a little bit more. And also looking at the fact that that blossoming that came from the deep capacity for pain that was created for you opened up space that was already there that you couldn't see, but it opened up the space which would now hold your well of joy that you create. And you being able to flip your mindset and flip the fear that's holding you bound into that, well, I can't do this, that's for other people. You know, no one understands my woe, like that woe is me stuff that kind of comes for all of us. Honoring when it's happening, it's okay to feel it. Like feel it, feel the feels of all of it. Just don't live in it. Right? Because if you live there, then you can't become the producer or the director of the next page if you're just like stuck in that one space. But being in the space where you get to choose, like, you know what? It's okay that I have, 3 degrees here, 2 degrees here, 4 degrees here, and I didn't do that other one. Who the hell cares? Right? Like in the end of the day.
And that's kind of what, I mean, your book, the name of your book is Selfish, and your Facebook group is Certified Selfish. So if anybody really wants to follow Naketa, you can follow her on her personal page, but she has a Facebook page called Certified Selfish, and her book is called Certified. And I think that not finishing that degree is actually a perfect example of the selfishness that you're talking about, which is I'm going to actually do what's for me the right thing versus what everybody else thinks it should be. And that's a very, very difficult concept for people to do as well.
Yeah, it was for me too, right? Like I don't start anything that I don't finish. Like that, my word was all I had for a very long time. If I said I was going to show up at your house at 8 p.m. on the dot, then you better believe at 7:45 I was parked outside waiting for you to get home, right? Like that was always what I had in my loyalty and my friendship and my relationships, even the ones that didn't honor me back, even the ones that didn't choose me the way that I chose them. Like I knew that I could walk away with integrity saying, I said I would be here. I said I would do it. I would do it. And then I was in this weird space of having to look at, well, what do you want to do with this? You can either grow your business and really be unleashed and unbound in all the ways that you want to do and help to give your family, you know, something you've never had, the freedom and flexibility to build, go and do whatever they want. Or you could say, no, I already did 3 years worth of classes. You're already in the middle of this dissertation. You better finish it, girl, like, and struggle for the next couple of years because, you know, you told the world that you were going to do this. Or you could say, you know what, screw this. What do I want? What do I want?
Pivot.
And exactly. Pivot into your truth, though, not just into something, because what I wanted didn't feel good. You know, Stacey, it does not always feel good to choose your business when business is not necessarily being nice to you. Right? You know, invoices for stuff that you've already done, but people aren't paying on time, and you know, all the different things, or all this hopium that happens in business where it's like, oh, I hope this contract goes through, right?
Hopium, that's so good. I've never heard it.
You know what I mean? Like, I felt like, talk about being an addict. Like I was an addict to hopium for a long time in the business. Like, I hope that conversation that went really well turns into business, and you know, nope, it didn't. Even for the ones that strung you along, like that was really hard, but it was uncomfortable and perfect. It's like the best way, like building a muscle. And for any of you who are listening who are like workout gurus, power to you. But any of you that like, you know, understand the power of exercise and having a healthy body, but don't necessarily like the work that goes into it, that's similar to how I felt like that choice was for me. Like I knew that I needed to get healthy. I knew that I needed to invest in my business. I really wanted to do it. I wanted the outcome of it, but I didn't necessarily want to do the work for it. And I knew that the Netflix and laziness, I don't want to say Netflix and chill because there's nothing wrong with Netflix and chill, right? But the Netflix and lazy version of it would have actually been finishing my dissertation with all the work, because that's easy. School is super easy for me. Like that, and that's part of why I've like done all the things. Like that was easy. Doing the harder, uncomfortable, awkward thing that I really wanted the outcome of, that was my selfish choice. It was choosing me, the one of the most difficult things in the world, so that I could be there for other people in a more selfless and authentic way later, but not yet. Not until I filled me up first. And I think that's the power of your platform, Stacey, being able to help people see you. It's not just like saying like, oh, that was a bad thing. Like, let's give it some time and then we'll be able to flip it around. It's saying, no, like, I get it. I see it. I feel it. I know that this is going to be difficult. And once I have space from it, once I'm able to grow through it, then I can do the awkward, uncomfortable thing, choosing myself and flipping my mindset to see that there was power in what I just went through. And I think that's the most powerful thing about what you're doing here.
I could like give another parable to that, but it just, you ended it so well. I'm not going to do it because otherwise this could go on and on and on. But I know I texted you like 100 times while I was reading the book. I honor your space. I honor the experience that you went through. Your experience, reading your experience made me so uncomfortable. Because I actually and we did not go through any of the same experiences. Mm-hmm. But the adrenaline that you had rushing into your body when you were trying to take your brother out onto the roof so you could get away from your mom's boyfriends who were trying to sexually molest you, mm-hmm. and sitting there and waiting for hours until they got in their car and left, the adrenaline that you got, I felt it.
Yeah.
And then that triggers me back mm-hmm. to my old fight or flight patterns. So I honor, and I'm really in awe of what you went through, because no, because of the way our society is built, no one would have ever blamed you of following into the same path that you were shown. Mm-hmm. And what you did is you did the hard work to change it 75%. Mm-hmm. And too many people are afraid of the pain and the hard work that are associated with the change, but nothing changes if nothing changes. And so what I hope is that people will have seen this and been inspired. Hopefully they'll grab your book. And I'll put a link in the comments of where people can find your book, and I'll put a link to your Certified Selfish page. But I hope that people will see that if they're going through a challenging experience, we get it. We get it. Life is designed to be a series of experiences that are challenging, so you can make the choice to rise from the fall, right? And so you can help other people rise from their falls and their falls and their falls. It's the impact that we all have the ability to make based on our own prior experiences. So I really hope that you'll be willing to come back, because I have a whole other series that I would love to do with you about ACEs and autoimmune, because I'm starting to really unravel that too as I'm going through my own autoimmune mystery. I'm learning so much in that space, and that's something I would love to help other people with too. And I know you too have been dealing with that, not just 1 or 2 or 4, but 6, right? Mm-hmm. 6 or 7. No surprise.
Right.
After I read that book, I was like, I'm surprised she doesn't have 10.
Right.
And so hopefully people will have seen this and they'll be encouraged to come back and hopefully watch episode 2, which you and I will get on the books. And if people are watching this on the replay and they want to share it, please. If you know somebody that needs to hear it, tag them. Feel free to reach out to Naketa or I privately. We're both very open people to helping others. And I just hope that you gained one benefit. If one person can gain one benefit from watching it, it was worth it, right?
Absolutely.
So I would just want to thank everybody for their time, because I know we went quite long, but I think the story was really important. And I hope that you guys will tune in with us when we do part 2. And my hope is that you have a wonderful day.